All right. All right. So we are going to continue with a second this breakout. We're going to kind of build on what we just did. So let me ask. And again, you can be honest. I'm not thin-skinned. Did you find the tool helpful? Okay, all right. So again, no matter where you show up, you want to be able to show up in a way that that lets people know you're for them. And that's the reason the support comes first. Is listen, I want you to know right away, I am for you. I'm not against you. I'm not trying to sabotage. I'm not trying to create a triangle or anything like that. I am for you. And then be able to give the support and then ultimately the challenge. And the challenge doesn't necessarily have to be hostile. In fact, it hardly ever is hostile. But if you start with challenge and you start with this idea that you didn't do something right, then people will become defensive. This works no matter what. If you're an elder in the church, or if you're a pastor, or if you are an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, business leader, people simply want to know, are you for me? Are you for me? And so again, that has been a tool that has impacted my life in a big way, because I used to be this protector. I'm all for encouraging people, but when it comes to challenging people, like that gave me anxiety, because how are they going to receive it? How are they going to respond? And ultimately what ended up happening when I finally did give the challenge, people said, thank you. Like, wow, I didn't even know that. And so I was getting all worked up for nothing. And so anyway, I just found it a very helpful tool. We want to kind of continue in that vein. So Jeremiah, in talking about influence, Jeremiah was a prophet. God called him to share a word of challenge for people, God's people. Also a word of encouragement. And so this is what God tells Jeremiah. If you return to me, I will restore you so you can continue to serve me. Even you see in God is giving both support and challenge. If you return to me, I will restore you. There's this sense of both grace and truth. And then he tells Jeremiah, you must influence them. Do not let them influence you. They will fight against you. There will be opposition, like an attacking army, but I will make you as secure as a fortified wall of bronze. They will not conquer you, for I am with you to protect you and rescue you. I, the Lord, have spoken. So God tells Jeremiah, and let's put ourselves in the place of Jeremiah. God is saying to Jeremiah, and God is also saying to us, that as you go into the culture, your family, your team, your organization, your community, you be the influencer. So as men, and as believers in general, but men in particular, the culture has influenced us, as opposed to us influencing the culture. And so, myself included. And so God tells Jeremiah that. And so the question of influence is, are you a thermometer or a thermostat? Are you a thermometer or a thermostat? Thermometers reveal the temperature in the room. Thermostats set the temperature in the room. Say that again. Thermometers reveal the temperature in the room. In other words, thermometer, if you're a thermometer, you walk in and say, whoa, all right, the temperature has already been set. I'm cold, or I'm too hot, or what have you. The temperature's already been set. But a thermostat says, when I walk into the room as a kingdom man, as a man whose life is being shaped by God, I set the temperature in the room. Now, that's not an arrogant, hubris kind of point. Is when you and I as men, kingdom men, walk into a room, something ought to happen. Something ought to happen. That you and I, somebody said there's something different about you. Something different about the way you show up. You actually are filled with joy and optimism and hope. Man, when you walked into the room, it's like, man, have you ever met somebody where you're just glad to see them because their smile, their encouragement, their what God has placed in their joy, they bring that to the room. And it's just like, wow, this atmosphere is different. You know why? Because before you came in the room, you set the temperature, and you said, the way I show up, I know it's important. I influence the room. The room doesn't influence me. Now, I mean, again, we've seen it, right? You're in a meeting. You're in a meeting, and someone has a very, very strong opinion. And if we're abdicators and protectors, not really willing to get into the fray, that one person wins the entire room. And before long, that person, the room is on that person's side, even though men in the room will say, that's not even what I believe, though. Again, the way we show up really does matter. And it really does begin with us. So human thermostats are intentional, not accidental, in all 5 circles of influence. Now, I'm going to give you the 5 circles of influence that you and I, to a certain degree, we live in. And because we live in these environments, sometimes we show up differently in these environments. All right? So I want you to think about the way you show up. Is it intentional or is it accidental? Again, intentionality is I am planning it. Accidental is if it happens, it happens. So when I show up, like when I take for instance my wife and I, our relationship. There's a lot of stuff that I've done, it's been accidental, and it's not been intentional. A lot of stuff that I've done with my children. I look at my children and the way they've turned out. All of our children they're in ministry in some way or another. And I look at them and say, are those even our kids? Like there are a lot of things that our kids really caught, and yet I wasn't intentional in some areas. I wish I could turn back the clock and say, man, I would be intentional here, I would be intentional here. The truth is, we have a greater amount of influence when we are intentional and not accidental. Now, here's the meat of this. So I want you to think about the support challenge matrix. You can take that out and take a look at it and look at the 5 circles of influence. The first person you and I have to influence is ourselves. Because the transformation of the leader precedes the transformation of the organization, the family, the team, the community. So the only person you have control over is you. The only person you have control over in terms of spiritual growth and health is your own. So you notice the arrow goes outward and not the other way around. Because the moment as we lead ourselves, we begin to lead others in most effective ways. So you have to know yourself to lead yourself. That's what we did. We did in the first session, know yourself to lead yourself. Am I a protector? Am I an abdicator? Am I a dominator? Or am I a liberator? Know yourself to lead yourself. So if you know who you are, you can now lead from where you are. And when I talk about lead, I'm talking about in every aspect of our lives, particularly our families, our children, our wives. Again, if you're a business owner, the way you show up really does matter. So the first one is yourself. The second one is your family. The third is your team, whatever team you're on in church or business life. The next is the organization, the overall organization you're a part of, the church, the place where you work, and then finally the community in which you live. My community is my mission field. And the way I show up in my community, am I someone who just drives, comes home, park my car in the garage, and Netflix and chill? Well, you know what I'm talking about. Well, we do. My wife and we do Netflix and chill. It's okay to Netflix and chill with your wife, right? And all of the older men say, "What is Netflix and chill?" Ask the younger people in the room, and they'll let you know. So now here's the interesting thing. The way we want to show up in every environment is as liberators. But the reality is, in some of these environments, we show up differently. So for some, you dominate yourself. And what I mean by that is you're always like, man, I messed up again. Oh, man, I messed up again. And it's like you're dominating yourself. Or you might be an abdicator, like, you know something, I don't want to exercise today. The fat is never going to go away. I like potato chips and popcorn way too much. I like Five Guys burgers and fries way too much. There's no way I am going to change. That's an abdication of yourself. Or a protector. You don't want to face the truth about who you are or who I am. And for a long time, I didn't want to face the truth about who I was. There are moments where I abdicated and I should have stepped up. There are moments where I should be a little bit more active in my kid's life and I wasn't. So sometimes as ourselves, we show up as abdicators or protectors or dominators in leading ourselves. But then we might show up as in the family as a liberator. And then we might show up in our team environment as a dominator. Or we might show up in the organization as someone who is a protector. So the interesting thing is you can show up in different ways in each of these places of influence. Now, the issue is how do I show up as a liberator in each of these environments? And again, going back to that question is asking yourself and being honest with yourself and having other people be honest with you to say, what is it like to be on the other side of me? Where do I need to grow in my life and leadership? Where do I need to get better in my own life and leadership? So really, the question is where are you personally right now? What are the things you are doing to grow? What are the things you are doing presently to grow as a man, as a father, as a husband, as an employee or employer, or a community leader? Where do you need to grow in those areas in terms of self? All right? So let me ask, just again, for those who willing to tread where angels fear to tread, what's an area just for you personally? Say, Marvin, this is where I need to grow. Anybody who say, okay, this is where I need to grow? Yes. Fear. Talk to me a little bit about that. Yeah. 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 Wow. Listen. Yeah. Thank you for letting us in this room hold that story, because every single man in this room is either sitting where you sit, have sat where you're sitting, or probably thinking about, I show up anxious, I show up fearful because I'm afraid that I'm going to fail my children, my wife. And the ironic part is The fear of failure pushes me to do more, and ultimately I end up losing the very thing that I said I want to protect. Does that make sense? Yeah. So knowing yourself to lead yourself is super, super important. Anybody else? We're saying, man, this is where I need to grow. Again, I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. Not trying to put anybody on the spot at all. But I want we're family here. Yes. So growing from being a dominator to be more of a liberator. Okay? Okay, very good. Thank you for letting us hold that story. And some men might be even not even want to share that. Like for you to be able to say, I recognize that I've probably been a dominator. And I've created an environment of fear and manipulation. And this is an area where I need to grow. I want to show up in my family, my team, as a liberator, and not for people to be afraid of me when I walk in the room. So interesting that when I get angry, and my family can tell you this, and I've grown from this, I get quiet. And my kids know when I am angry because I get quiet. Another thing that I do when they know that I'm angry is when I've asked them to do something and they don't do it, and then I'll just say, that's okay. That's okay. And they'll say, yeah, Dad is angry. And so I have had to learn that I need to show up differently in those environments. And so leading yourself is first, because out of the leadership of ourselves, growing and letting the Holy Spirit grow us helps to move in the next direction, which is our family. It's the way we show up with our family. Our kids want to know, our wives want to know, are you for me? This is another circle of influence. The first circle is myself. The second circle is the people that are closest to me, my family. And again, this is another one of those moments where you can ask your family, where do I show up? How do I show up? So family, and then ask them. So what do you think of me? This is a scary question. It really is a scary question because I don't want to know some things about here it is. I know some things about myself, but I don't want people to say it out loud. Does that resonate with people? Like, I know it about myself, but I don't want to hear my kids or my wife actually say it. And this is one area, that, again, another circle of influence, because the way you show up with your family is going to help your children show up in a certain way, your wife show up in a certain way. So there's a lot of baggage we bring from our family of origin into the family of God. And this is the reason why how we influence our family is so important. I love what Peter Scazzaro says, Jesus may be in your heart, but grandma is in your bones. And in other words, we bring baggage from our family of origin into the family of Jesus. And we have to unlearn how we were influenced. We take what the good is, and the bad, we have to look at how do we learn to live in the family of God the way Jesus wants us to. So my dad, I would say, listen, I do not want to be like my dad. And guess what happened? I showed up in a lot of ways early in my marriage as an abdicator. I had a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde attitude. I would hint at stuff, but I would not talk openly and honestly about it. And I am having to unlearn a lot of what I learned in my family of origin and let Jesus actually shape that so I can actually influence my family as a liberator. My mom, on the other hand, was a dominator. Like if you did not do what she said, we got punishment. And punishment for us, it was a whooping, not a whipping, not a spanking. It was a whooping. Whatever she could get her hands on, she did it. Like, you remember those Hot Wheel racing tracks, the orange ones? Like, I know that very intimately. And so on the other hand, she was the no parent, and she was the dominating parent. And so when I had kids, guess who the no parent was? Me. I said no to a lot of stuff. Dad, can I go to a party? No. Dad, can I go to the movie? No. My wife, on the other hand, was kind of the yes parent. And my wife had to remind me, do you ever remember when you were 16? And I said, nope, I don't. I was never 16 years old. And I finally saw that, man, I have become my parents. So I had to learn how to function and calibrate both support and challenge in my family and unlearn a lot of stuff that I learned in my family of origin. Again, I think I may have shared last time, and maybe I didn't. I saw my dad hit my mom. And it was a scary thing for me because my dad was my hero. But the moment I saw him hit my mom, I saw holes in his cape. He no longer stood as a hero to me. He stood as someone who I learned to hate and become bitter toward. And so as I watched him, we never talked about it after it happened. Never, ever talked about it again, not even after he died. So what I learned to do, I learned to suppress and hide. And I brought suppression of my feelings and emotions and things that I liked and didn't like into my marriage and into my parenting. And I was not a liberator for my family. So I found myself having to unlearn and to actually express, this is the way I feel. This is the way, this is what's going on inside of me. And so, family, and then your team. I want you to, when you go back to work on Monday, for those of you who are still working, and some of you are retired, but you have some buddies that you hang out with. But your team, the team you work with, or if you're the boss, the team that's under you, I want you to ask the question, explain the tool, how do I show up? Because the way you influence your team, you want your team to know that you are for them. And then obviously the organization you're a part of, and then ultimately the community in which you live is another place you and I influence. These are the 5 circles of influence. There might be more, but these are the 5 circles of influence that God has placed us in. And ask yourself, how do I show up in those areas? Now, what I want to do now, I want to actually take questions if you have questions about both tools and how we might calibrate and understand them a little bit better based on something that's like, man, I didn't quite get that, didn't quite understand that. So questions you might have regarding what we shared the first time, and then the 5 circles of influence. Question that you might have, yes? That's a great question. There are a couple of ways you can do it. The first one, pardon me. Oh, I'm sorry. He's saying when you're the boss of, he's a small business owner, and typically employees will maybe not be as honest with the boss because he or she is the boss. And that my feedback could be tied to my paycheck, or my feedback could be tied to how the opportunities that I get in the future. And so how do I do that? So there are a couple of ways you can do it. The first way, you can say, like for real, I am for you, and I truly, truly want your honest feedback. And I am not going to, here are the rules. I'm not going to get defensive. This doesn't affect your paycheck, and mean it. And this doesn't affect future opportunities. As a leader, I desire to grow. And after they have the heart attack and you resuscitate them, then you can say, here's the support challenge matrix, and please help me to grow because I desire to grow, and I want you to grow as well. Second way you can do it is explain the tool and then have them to plot you and then leave the room. Or leave the room and then have them to plot you, so that your presence is not giving undue anxiety in the room where they can't be honest. And so those are two ways that I know have worked, where individuals say, hey, I really want to grow and I value your feedback. And without your feedback, I know that I cannot grow. So I welcome it and desire it. Secondly, hey, if my presence is causing you to feel anxious about what you're going to write down, I'm going to leave the room, and please feel free to put that down. And when I come back, same thing. I'm not going to get defensive. Because I truly want to grow. Does that help? Okay, very good. Somebody else, yes. Yeah, that's a great question. Just run. I'm just So really, it really goes back to your heart, and that is, babe, I'm for you. I want you to know I married you 50 years ago or 40 years ago, whatever it is, and I have been for you since we were married. And now some of the things I'm going to share, again, the support first is super, super important. You are an amazing cook. You are an amazing wife. Like when we make love, my heart almost stops because it's just so good. We're all men, right? So I can say that, right? And you are amazing. But here are some of the things that I want to share with you. And even to be able to say, like, I've been actually afraid to share this because I didn't know how you were going to take it. But I love you enough to share these things and know that I'm for you. And keep reminding her, I am for you. I didn't wake up this morning to ruin your life. I want us to grow as a couple, and this tool has helped me, or is helping me, and I want it to help us as a couple to be able to grow. But great question, because I have to remind my wife that, listen, baby, I'm for you. Because there are some things that I share with her that's like she doesn't like it. And yet, later on, she comes back and says, thank you for sharing the honest truth with me. So I would rather someone tell me the truth than to lie to me all the time and stay stuck. All right? I thought I had a question here. Okay, so protector is a protector is low on the challenge. That if you leave a protector to him or herself, they will never, ever hold you accountable. They will just simply give you encouragement. Hey, that was a great job you did, great job. Man, you are a great employee, but yet you know some things that need to get better, but you never ever share those things because either you are anxious about it or you don't know how they're going to receive it. And the other thing is that we have not shared the challenge in the past, and now we've gotten angry enough and frustrated enough to finally share that now I'm holding you accountable for something. So the protector, high support, great job, great job, great job. But when it comes to actually moving them in another direction, calling the best out of them, even though it might mean it might hurt them a little bit based on what you have to share with them, we shrink from that. And we actually never share the challenge of holding someone accountable. Now, on the other hand, a dominator is all challenge. It is all, you didn't do it, and hey, crack the whip, let's go. Our numbers are down. And the person that you're saying that to is like, you're always cracking the whip, and you never ever told us that we've done a good job with the last project that we did. Does that make sense and bring a little bit more distinction? Okay. All right, yes. Yeah, an enabler. That's a very good word, an enabler, and not someone who says, I'm going to hold you accountable, number one, for what you said you were going to do, or when you do something wrong, or that's not in keeping, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to brush it under the carpet. Typically, protectors are afraid to bring the challenge because they are afraid of conflict. That may be a better way to talk about it and think about it. They are afraid of conflict, and because they're afraid of conflict, they don't say anything at all. Does that help? Okay, thank you for that. Enabler, that's a great word too. Whoa. All right, I know we have to go. One more question, and then we'll finish up. Yes. Yeah, I think some of the circles of influence can be the same, but the environments might be different, and when you add other people to it, we end up showing up differently in those environments, though some people are in the same circle of influence. And so the people on your team, same people in your organization, but then you have a mix of other people, and it's like, I don't think I'm going to show up as a liberator. I'm going to show up more as a dominator because there's so many other people in the room, and I need to kind of flex a little bit to show that I'm the boss. And you can still be the boss with both high support and high challenge. And that's my time. I'm done. Corey, you're up.